Trump's not, America first anymore. Nick Fuentes is now America, is now the voice of America first, which is just the dumbest shit I think I've heard since New Coke, maybe. And actually New Coke wasn't all that bad. That's the funny part about it.
Neither is
So
Nick Fuentes. But anyways, go ahead.
yeah, yes. No,
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes is the freaking Joker, man. I'm sorry. That's what
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
And I will go to my grave on that one. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's fine. I don't care.
Anyways, but go ahead.
No, it's very important. Do you understand that that's all part of the psyop of what we're dealing with right now as Trump wins the shutdown, which was done in order to create the situation that we have right now in American politics, which is that, oh, it's all falling apart and MAGA's gonna die and blah blah blah, and all this. Like, really? What are you nuts? He's just the first American Republican president to win a shutdown.
Hmm.
Really? And now he's going to roll everybody. So clearly, he's got a 60-day runway now from now until the State of the Union address to do so. That's what I think he's going to do. So you can salt that analysis to taste, but he's got 60 days, and he comes out this morning with, "Hey, let's release the Epstein files." It's a perfect time to say that, right?
Yeah.
Because Epstein has been the thing that has damaged him the most with the base that he's trying to hold, that everybody is trying to meme into existence that he has to hold on to, which is obviously Gen Z men.
Yeah.
Gen Z men don't vote, and Gen Z men did not win Trump the election. Gen Z men were a great story surrounding that election, but the reality is that Gen X men won him the election. Myself and people like me and people like you. Now, that being said, when you go back and start thinking about BRICS as the hedge in case the United States loses, what if the United States wins its independence? Well, then you have ARC, right? Which is what we've talked about in the past: America, Russia, China,
Hmm.
right? And America, Russia, China makes more sense
Yeah.
than BRICS ever did, right? And because America, Russia, China, they all have the same, they all have a common desire, which is to be the industrial capitals of the world in the case of the United States and China, and Russia to be the power that sits in the land-based power that sits in between, that provides all the commodities to
Right.
bring the entire second world out of the 19th century, which has been a British geopolitical imperative for 300 years,
Yeah.
keeping all the stands fighting amongst themselves, keep India and Pakistan, and the whole of Southeast Asia, most of Africa, all of it, right? And it's
Right.
not just the British in this. Now the Portuguese and the Dutch and the French were all involved in all of this stuff as well, especially the Middle East. So Trump spent most of 2025, trying to fix as many of those permanent conflicts as possible in order to set the stage for when he goes back to now start fixing the domestic situation, which is clearly what's on the table for 2026, which is also the election year, which is also the primaries, which is the this and all of those things. And so you take it all to its limit, and then you watch to see who gets cold feet. In his case, he watches to see who gets cold feet. He sends certain people out there. I think it's interesting. Because I've been caught up directly in this over the last 3 or 4 days. So since you and I spoke, didn't do this thing, we were supposed to do it on Friday, but over the weekend I got attacked by Robert Barnes, who ghosted me 3 years ago. Now I find that interesting that Robert Barnes, for the first time since the last time he and I spoke on my podcast, then goes after me for me going after Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now Marjorie Taylor Greene, I've always called AOC for magatards. I've been calling her that for 2 years. This is nothing new. I don't know what, now all of a sudden it's not acceptable. I've never liked Marjorie, and I've never trusted her as far as I could throw her. And with those gorilla arms and that grouper face, how the hell could I? She probably benches more than I do. Um,
Truly.
mm, that's
She
only
does
because I refuse.
CrossFit.
That's only because I refuse to go to the fucking gym. I mean, because I'd rather smoke cigars, smoke coffee, and kvetch because I'm good at it. Um, Now, that being said, when I see that happening at the same time as this full court press, while Trump is winning the shutdown and shifting the narrative to, we need the 50-year mortgage, the dissolution of Obama. He's out there again today. He just did 9 minutes on the tarmac, outside of Air Force One. I was just watching it before we went live with this. that, he's like, no, we're going to, like, I just kind of flippantly said, hey, why don't we give the money that everybody's paying to the insurance companies? Why don't we just give it to the people and let them go buy health insurance? Like, no, yeah,
Right.
that's exactly right. So he's clearly been like, oh, we're gonna fix Obamacare. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do. So you can see the domestic talking points that he's trying to hit now. All the affordability stuff, all of the pricing stuff, and also to stop the radicalization of the young left and right, the young men, right? And say, look, you don't have to go to the accelerationists on the left or the right. You don't have to embrace Fuentes because Trump has betrayed you, and you don't have to embrace Zoran Mandami in New York because capitalism is fucked. Neither of those things are true, by the way. These guys are both the exact same thing in different packages, marketed to different sectors of the electorate. The reality is that we can bring you back to the center if we can just make life 20% more affordable.
Right.
And we have to do so in such a way that we don't watch a massive deflationary collapse of asset prices, which would then tear the country apart even more so from just a cultural and societal perspective. All of a sudden, if we're in a deflationary depression a la 1931 or 32, who does that benefit? Well, the
Hmm.
last time it benefited the exact same Anglo-Dutch colonial system that eventually gave us World War II, and all those men that have been radicalized, then they get to fight. Then they get to fight the big war against Islam, which is clearly what's being set up here.
Hmm.
So how about we don't do any of that, and y'all go back to work, you know, building railroads and building chip factories and building steel plants and building ships and building cars and you know building new houses, and you know learn a trade and do a thing, and then we'll fix the cash flow situation for you, such that, and that's what the 50-year mortgage is all about. We'll fix the cash flow situation that you can support a family of four on an electrician's salary.
Hmm.
But we can't fix but we're in such a state financially because all the wealth has been rolled up into the financial class over the last 25, 30 years, that we now need to reverse the wealth gap and the wealth disparity. And we need to roll the money out of the financial class, out of the Blackstones and the BlackRocks and the State Streets and all those guys and all the private equity assholes. We need to roll all that out back down to the lower middle classes. Kind of exactly what Javier Milei is apparently beginning to do in Argentina. Now,
Hmm.
I'm gonna say this, knowing full well that I used to land-based Millet because I didn't trust him. Why? Because he just looked too good to be true.
Hmm.
But it's clear that Trump and Besant, backing him in Argentina, the same way that now Trump is talking about making a deal with Maduro in Venezuela. The goal is to take those players that are, in the case of Argentina, that have been bound down and kept off the board of fulfilling their economic promise in the case of Argentina, or in the case of Venezuela, being the center for in the Western Hemisphere for the international drug and child trafficking trade. In the Western Hemisphere, hey, how about we take that away? We take that away from them. We take that away from the British and the French and the Dutch out of out of Venezuela, and we shore up Argentina, um, and we have allies in those countries as opposed to adversaries. So that's the high level thing. So now let's go all the way back to what you asked, what we talked about originally, and I said, well, BRICS was always a hedge. This is where Donald Trump is winning. And so the antithesis of so if you're his enemy, what narrative are you going to put out there? Well, he doesn't care about Americans. He's trying to fix all. He's trying to solve Israel's problems and this one's problems and that one's problems. No, by solving those problems, it actually makes it easier for him to solve America's problems. Because you can't solve the domestic policy if you can't solve the foreign policy and the flow of dollars around the world, so that you don't control how those dollars flow. Because
Okay. Can I
you know,
interrupt you?
sure.
Can I interrupt you? Because this is, I think, a huge point. This is the question I had actually, just
Hmm.
trying to understand this, is going around the world, what's in it for us? And I think Argentina is a great example. What's in it for us? And I asked that to Hanky, Professor Hanky, and he says influence. And I go back to one of the very first times we talked, I don't know, a year and a half ago, whatever that was.
Sure.
We
Hmm.
talked about a shift from a politics of to a politics of influence. I want to say
Sure.
that's what you said, or
Oh,
leverage. Use the word
okay,
leverage.
right. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
yeah, I'm a leverage kind of guy because I'm thinking like Trump, right? Now,
Right.
there's two other things that we get out of Argentina directly:
Yeah.
silver and beef. This isn't hard. Like, Argentinian beef is some of the best beef in the world. We have herds that are still recovering from the shock of COVID because it takes 5 years to replace a friggin' heifer that you've a working heifer that you've slaughtered, and we slaughtered a lot of heifers, and like that's the reality. You don't like it if you don't know if you think it's 2 years, then you're dumb. You don't know the math because you've actually never raised livestock. I know how this shit works. I've raised goats, which have a high replacement rate, but and I've talked to cattle farmers directly about this because I live, up until recently, this is my second place up in Tennessee that you're seeing. And oh, by the way, look, no palatial mansion here, a 14-year-old RV and a freaking pole barn out here bivouacking in rural Tennessee. Oh yeah, I'm really spending all that Israeli money. Okay,
That
so
being said, it is beautiful, man. I'm
hey
very
man, I'm loving every minute of it up here, but I worked hard for it, and now I'm putting a little bit of the money that my patrons have blessed me with to go out and have a not have to live and not have to spend 12 months a year in the Florida heat. I
yeah.
get my choice, right? So
Right.
I can go, I can actually live a little, and and not have to not have to eat shit every day. Well, I do. I go on Twitter, so of course I eat shit every day now. But I also give it out as bad as I get it.